So today we're going to continue with the monarchs of Europe. We're going to finish up and talk about Russia today. And then we're going to talk about Central Europe as well. When we discuss Russia, you have to understand that there are going to be three monarchs that we're going to discuss today. And the first one is going to be Ivan IV. Ivan IV is going to take the throne at age 16, and he's going to declare himself a czar. I know you want to pronunciate the C, but you don't do that, so you just say the Z is the czar, okay? Which is an emperor, so he's going to be the emperor of Russia. Later, he will become known as Ivan the Terrible because he is a strong, strict, and somewhat of a tyrant in his absolute rulership of Russia. He made several military and legal reforms. What he's trying to do is that he's going to take these reforms, which you remember the word reform means to change or to improve. He's going to take these reforms to reduce the power of the boyars, which are the landowners in Russia. This is a picture of Ivan, which also, if you look at this artwork dealing with Ivan, he's going to be portrayed terribly. So when you look at the images on his face and how they shadow his face, he looks like he has a mean or evil demeanor. Remember that if an artist or the population of Russia is not too fond of Ivan, they will definitely make sure that they portray him in that type of manner. So take a look at the artwork here. Also, I'm going to do a couple other things though. He's going to expand Russia's western borders. So he's trying to expand his empire. Remember that the expansion of land is good because you can gain more power. But by the 1560s, Ivan's going to have a change. He's going to become very suspicious of his advisors, and his wife is going to die unexpectedly, and he believes that she's murdered. So what he's going to do is create a police force that will brutally punish anyone who spoke against him. So in Russia during this time, there's not any freedom of speech. You can't say, oh, I hate Ivan IV, or Ivan is totally, completely terrible, and we hate him. Like, there's no way that people can do that during this time without being punished. And remember that with an absolute monarchy, it's what they say goes. So if Ivan does not want anybody speaking against him, and he will definitely make sure that they're punished, and he'll make an example out of them for all the people of Russia. Also, he's going to seize land from 12,000 boyars. So he's going to start stealing or taking land from the landowners to reduce their own power, because the landowners in Russia during this time, they're very similar to the nobility in the hierarchy of Russia. So they have a lot of power, and he's going to take that land away from them. And here's some images of the boyars. If you notice, they have very, very tall hats. Now, moving on, Peter the Great. Now, remember that I told you when we have monarchies and you have these certain titles, when you look back on history, they either were called Peter the Great because they did something awesome, Ivan the Terrible because people thought he was horrible. So keep that in mind. Now, he will be the next great czar for Russia. This is an image of him right here. He is going to work to modernize Russia. When we talk about modernizing or westernization, that is when you start to adapt Western culture. So what you have to remember is that what Peter is going to do is he's going to disguise himself, and he's going to travel through Western Europe, countries like England and France and Spain and all those areas, and he's going to notice that they're a little more advanced than Russia. And so when he gets back home, he's going to try to change several things. The first thing he's going to do is strengthen his Russian Navy, because he notices that other European nations have navies, and that is how they can fight. And it makes them stronger in warfare, and also makes them a threatening force to other countries. So a couple of the things that he's going to do is he's going to take these Western elements from Spain and England and France and all the areas that he toured on the western end of Europe, and he's going to bring this westernization to Russia, okay? And that's new elements from Western culture of Europe. So he's going to adopt those into Russia. First, a couple of things he's going to do. He's going to bring the church under his control, which, if you've noticed that there are a lot of monarchs during this time who the church, when the monarchs of Europe rise, that the church is more at their beck and call than it was previously in the Middle Ages, especially when you remember Henry VIII created his own Church of England, and you had to serve the church and you had to serve the king. Peter the Great's going to look at all of these ideas that the monarchs on the western coast have, dealing with the church relationship and the monarchy, and how the monarchy has taken more power away from the church. Also, he's going to build up industry, so more people are going to have jobs and trades and all that kind of thing. He's going to start the first newspaper. which newspapers are important because they spread news and information. He's going to sponsor new schools, which means that he's big on education. He's going to modernize the calendar. He's going to promote officials based on their service. So he's not just going to place people in a position because either they're family or he likes them. It's because they do their job well. Also, he's going to allow factory owners to buy and sell workers. Another thing that Peter is going to do is he's going to fight the Great Northern War against Sweden. The main goal was that he wanted to gain a warm water port because you know we've talked as a class about Russia, and Russia is a very cold, tundra-like area, and so when it comes down to farming and things like that, they're very big on farming, but they also have a difficult time because of the weather there. So he wants a warm water port. The war is going to last from 1700 to about 1721. Peter is going to win some of the land that he fights for with Sweden, and then he's going to build St. Petersburg, okay? And this is going to be the new capital for Russia, and he's going to design it with Western-style architecture. So remember that he toured Europe, or Western Europe, and he saw the architecture in England and all those other countries, and he's going to model his architecture in Russia to look similar. So if you look right here, and then also you can see that this is like a layout of St. Petersburg. All right, it's Peter the Great. Moving on, Catherine the Great. Catherine the Great, first of all, she's going to be a German princess, and originally her name is going to be Sophia. She marries Peter the Great's grandson, it's Peter the Third. Okay, and what she's going to do, she's going to change her name to Catherine. She's going to convert to be a Russian Orthodox, which means that she's still in part of the Christian religion. But what's going to happen is that her husband's going to be murdered, and Catherine the Great is going to be declared the Empress of Russia. Now, she is still the same person, so her name was Sophia, and what she's going to do is eventually change it to Catherine the Great. She's still the same lady. She just has a new title and a new position. Okay. Now, she's also going to support Western ideas. So remember previously I talked to you about Westernization. She's going to adopt Western ideas, but she's still going to believe in absolute power. Like, she's like, I'm the queen, what I say goes. But I do like a lot of the ideas in Western culture, so the western coast of Europe. Now, under Catherine, though, Russia is going to fight a war against Poland, and they're going to actually win. And what Catherine decides to do is she's going to divide Poland between Russia and Austria, which is going to create an alliance. Now, Catherine the Great is going to have an issue. There's going to be a man that's going to pop up and claim that he is her deceased husband, Peter the Third, and the serfs in Russia are going to believe him. And so Catherine has to regain control, and eventually he is captured, and I believe that she has him killed, and then she regains control of the country. But for a moment it was, or for a while it was divided. What she will do, though, to strengthen her authority in those rural areas where there are serfs and there's farming, she's going to reorganize the local governments. She's going to start putting the administrative powers in the hands of the landowners and also in the nobles. So it's kind of like when we talk about Charlemagne, or we talk about other leadership roles, that these kings, these queens cannot be everywhere at one time. So what they start to do is they send people that are devoted to them, that can rule in their place, and they check in and touch base with Catherine. It's just like I told you, like Barack Obama. He cannot be everywhere at one time, and that's why you have governors who represent our states, because Barack Obama can't be in all one place at one time. So that's what you have to think about, is that these monarchies cannot be everywhere at one time, but they do have officials and people who can take up a leadership position and rule smaller areas of land for them. All right. And now we're going to talk about monarchs and the conflict in Central Europe. So I'm going to talk to you about two wars, or one war actually, and then the Westphalia theories, the Habsburgs, which you've heard about the Habsburgs a lot, which they deal with Austria and their empire in Austria. If you remember correctly, that the Habsburgs are going to have a lot of allegiance with Spain and the Holy Roman Empire, which is going to make these three groups an elite force in Europe. And I know you remember that France and other nations are not going to like that these larger empires are aligning with each other because it's a threat. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the 30 Years' War. All right, make sure you're writing this down. Now, the 30 Years' War is going to start in 1555. You remember, well, not actually in 1555, but the Peace of Augsburg is going to be signed in 1555. Remember that this is going to deal with Germany and how the German princes can pick whether they want their nation to be Protestant or it could be Catholic. And this is going to solve this problem that the Catholics have with the Protestants, briefly, for a little while. Now, in 1618, things are going to get real. What's going to happen is that Catholic officials are going to decide that they want to destroy a Protestant church located in Prague, which is in between, like, it's in Germany, Poland, if you look at this map over here near Austria. So it's kind of in the middle of everything. Now, if you remember with the Peace of Augsburg, it deals with German princes. So if that Prague is that area that's been decided that it's Protestant, the Catholic officials should not be tearing down that church. So what the Protestants are going to do is they're going to react by throwing the emperor's representatives out the palace windows. What you need to understand, and I think you've kind of already picked up on it, is that the Protestants and Catholics are going to be physically violent against each other. And this is not the first time that we've talked about this, but it's a constant tick for tat. It's a back and forth issue. And it's very interesting because both of these groups claim to be Christians, but they are shedding each other's blood. What's going to happen is that when this Protestant church is destroyed and these Catholics are thrown out the window, this is going to begin the 30 Years' War, okay? Which is pretty much going to involve most of Europe. Either they have political motives or religious motives. And you can look here, home in a little bit so you can copy down your notes. Here's Prague, images, and here's painting of the Europeans fighting. Now, there are going to be a couple effects of the 30 Years' War. What you need to remember is that France is going to enter the war on the Protestant side. Now, here's the deal. You know that the French have constantly gone back between being Catholic, Protestant, and you know that when we got done with our notes on France, that at the end, France was claimed as a Catholic nation. So what's going to happen, though, is that France is trying to play it smart. What they're doing is they're going to align on the Protestant side of the war because they want to weaken the alliance between Spain and the Holy Roman Empire. You remember previously that Charles V is going to take the Holy Roman Empire, and previously he was the king of Spain. So Spain and the Holy Roman Empire are aligned. What's going to happen is France is going to try to oppose that and come in on the Protestant side. Now, the war is technically going to be pretty much a Protestant victory, and the war is going to end in 1648 with the Treaty of Westphalia. This treaty is going to extend religious toleration. When we talk about religious toleration, it's a term that you should know, that people are more open, or they have to be tolerant. They have to be respectful of other religions. It also is going to ultimately diminish the power of the Holy Roman Empire and but it's going to strengthen the states within it. So they're going to become more independent. And we're going to actually go over the Westphalian theories. Here's an image of them signing the treaty. Now, Westphalia theories. There are three. The first one is that individual states have the right to be sovereign and supreme. Well, sovereign means like supreme. They have self-determination, which means individual states deal with individual governments. They have the right to determine how they want to run their government. All states, so when we talk about all governments, they are equal. So when we talk about, remember when you guys created your nations the other day, and you guys were talking about how you didn't want other nations involved in your business, or that they had to respect your rules. So if they wanted to come over to your nation, they had to play by your rules. All governments are equal. Also, one state should not intervene with the affairs of others. Some of you were like, when you created your nations and you knew your neighbor was your nation, you were like, well, you are my neighbor, but you can't, interfere with my affairs. You guys can come over and visit, or we can trade, but you don't need to be involved in my affairs. And this is what you need to think about with these Westphalia theories, is that these nations are finally going to start to create these borderlines that are definite and sure, like France and England, Spain, Austria. All these areas are going to arise, and they're going to have their own states, their own governments, and they are going to maintain these three rules amongst their states, their governments. Okay, and you need to keep that in your mind, and you need to hold on to it, because this is going to come into play later, because we're going to have a lot of wars, and people are going to try to get involved with other people's affairs, and that's not practicing the correct Westphalia theories. So make sure that you write these down and that you highlight them, because they're very important for your notes. Couple of things. The Habsburgs. They are the Austrian Empire. The Habsburgs are going to be rulers in Austria and the Holy Roman Empire. But what's going to happen is that they are eventually going to have rivals or enemies. The Hohenzollern family is going to rise up against them, and they begin to start claiming the towns that were deserted after the 30 Years' War. And then eventually what will happen is that in 1701, Frederick I is going to become the first individual to take the title as King of Prussia. So this land they acquire, they're going to eventually call it Prussia. You can look at this map right here. And you see the blue is the Habsburgs' dominion. So remember, though, that the Habsburgs, some of Isabel and Ferdinand's children, I think 2 of them, actually marry into the Habsburg family, which forms an alliance amongst the Habsburgs and Spain. And also keep in mind that Charles V is the Holy Roman Emperor, so all of these guys are going to be aligned. Now, in 1740, though, the Habsburg Emperor Charles VI dies, and what Charles had planned to do was leave his throne to his daughter, which is Maria Theresa. But what is going to happen, though, is that Frederick II of Prussia is going to not want her to take over this throne, and so they're going to fight the War of Austrian Succession. Remember, succession is when your successor is the person who takes over after you. He wants to prevent this, so in the end, though, Maria is going to get the W, and she's still going to remain the empress. And Austria, though, in this war is going to lose a bit of territory to Prussia. Now, last but not least, we're going to talk about Frederick the Great. Frederick the Great is also known as Frederick II. Now, he is known as the Great because he doubled the size of Prussia with his army, with his military force. In 1756, though, the 7 Years' War is going to begin. Prussia and Great Britain fought against Austria, France, and Russia. What's going to happen, though, is the war is going to end with both sides exhausted, and what eventually is going to happen is that they're going to continue to struggle for many years. I'm also going to talk to you about the French and Indian War, which is happening in the Americas during this time, and it's directly linked to the 7 Years' War, but we're going to pick that up in the next unit. So just keep in mind with these monarchs, please reference the diagram that Ms. Piner and I made for you because it helps you not be confused, because a lot of these names overlap and people change their names, and then people rule one area and then they take over another area. So make sure that you're listening to this fully. You can stop, you can pause, you can rewind, you can fast forward. Make sure you're writing your notes, but also make sure you're listening.